You don't want to dive into battle, Charles?
No.
Let's throw down. Let's have a Donnybrook.
Hello and welcome to JudgeCast. This is episode 7 of our brand new series of YouTube videos focusing on how to become a level 1 judge. My name is Bryan Charles, and I am joined this evening, afternoon, morning drive to work by the one and only Charles Feather.
Hello.
And the one and only Marco Sanchez.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, so in this episode, we are going to be talking about steps and phases of a turn. But before we get started,
on to the next step, which is where we talk about our sponsor, who is Judge Foundry. Judge Foundry is a membership-based nonprofit organization serving the U.S. and Canada in providing certifications for tabletop gaming officials. They manage everything to do with obtaining and maintaining your judge certification, and they provide educational resources just like this one right here that you're listening to ensure that every Judge Foundry certified judge has the knowledge and the skills to be successful. When it comes to running Magic events at your local game store or at a larger international convention, Judge Foundry is a fantastic resource for you to certify your skills. For more information on Judge Foundry, visit judgefoundry.org and click on the orange Become a Judge button to find out how you can earn your level. The link is in the description below. And on to the next phase.
In this episode, we will discuss the structure of a turn in a game of Magic, as well as the turn-based actions that are associated with each step and phase. This will continue our focus on what a level 1 judge working F&M or scheduled events at a larger event should know. As always, not every corner is explored in depth, but if you wish to go deeper or explore topics faster than these videos come out, you can delve into our extensive library at JudgeCast.com or search for us in your podcast app of choice. Our podcasts are typically at least an hour, so you get both more detailed discussion, humor, insight, and of course, our witty discourse about pop culture.
Truth.
all right, so every turn in Magic has 5 phases, much like the phases of the moon. We have waxing gibbous, waning we have the beginning phase, the first main phase, the combat phase, the second main phase, and the ending phase. Okay, some phases are further broken down into steps. The beginning phase is broken down into the untap step, the upkeep step, and the draw step. The combat phase is broken down into the beginning of combat, declare attacker step, declare blocker step, combat damage step, and end of combat step. The ending phase has the end step and the cleanup step. The main phases, both the first and the second, do not have any steps within them. All right. The distinction between a phase and a step nowadays is largely aesthetic. Like back in the old days, the prehistory days of Magic, it mattered a lot more. It does help when you're learning them to group similar steps together in the phases, but largely the difference between steps and phases is just purely academic.
So for today, we're going to cover what you can do in each phase and the turn-based actions associated with each phase. Since the combat phase and its steps are more complex, we're actually going to dedicate an entire episode specifically to the combat phase.
Next episode,
now,
in fact.
In the next episode, spoilers. But for now, we're going to talk about turn-based actions. Turn-based actions are game actions that happen automatically at certain parts of the turn. It's kind of like if you think about Monopoly, when you pass go, you collect $200. It just happens when that happens. In Magic, turn-based actions happen first. They're not triggers, they don't use the stack, and you cannot respond to them. No one owns them for the purposes of the game, even if one player is the only one that's performing the action.
And the only way to begin is by beginning. In the beginning. The beginning phase begins as soon as your turn begins. In the beginning phase, we have the untap step, the upkeep step, and the draw steps.
So you would think that the first thing that happens in the untap step is that you untap all of your permanents. You'd like to think that, but we actually have two turn-based actions that are performed before we do that. The first is phasing. All right? Your phased out permanents phase in, your phased in permanents phase out. We do the hokey pokey and we turn ourselves about. Okay? The next thing we do is we check to see if we need to deal with the day-night mechanic at all. If day needs to become night, night needs to become day, any of that stuff. All right. Now, after we've done all that, now we can start untapping things. So the active player untaps all permanents they control that they're allowed to, okay? And if there's any cards that let you choose not to untap a permanent, you make that choice right before untapping. So there are some cards that say you may choose not to untap Vidalcan Shackles during your untap step. And in that particular case, you'd make the choice to not untap it before you untap. The untap is special in the sense that it's comprised of 3 turn-based actions, and there's no opportunity for a player to get priority during the untap. Okay? If any triggers would trigger during the untap step, say you've got a Mesmeric Orb on the battlefield, they're going to wait until the next step, or the upkeep, to be put on the stack.
In the upkeep step, there are no turn-based actions. As we talked about the priority episode, we check for any state-based actions, then place all triggers waiting to go on the stack onto the stack. This will be anything that triggered during your untap step and any other triggers that trigger at the beginning of your upkeep. After all those triggers are put onto the stack, the active player will get priority for the first time in the turn.
The draw step has a very important turn-based action. You draw a card from your library for the turn. It cannot be responded to, and if an opponent wanted to do something before your draw, they had to act during your upkeep. Because again, draw step has the turn-based action of drawing your card at the very beginning. Then, similarly to upkeep steps, any triggers that have triggered since the last time a player received priority would go onto the stack. At this point, the active player would get priority, and we're going to shortcut this process of triggers waiting to be put onto the stack or placed on the stack and players get priority to just being assumed that will happen at every step unless we specify otherwise, because this is going to get really repetitive if we have to say this every time.
After the draw step, we have our first main phase, and that's essentially one big giant step. And there are a few turn-based actions that happen first. Not going to talk about Archenemy. Nope.
Oh, come on.
Nope. So after that thing that we're not going to talk about, we deal with the turn-based action of placing a lore counter on each saga you control. Okay. After all that, we do attractions, another thing that we're not going to talk about for this episode. Okay.
Yeah.
So the main phase itself, so those turn-based actions happen. The 2 things that we're not going to talk about, and then the sagas that we are. Lore counter goes on, and then those abilities triggered. Now the main phase is a special place in our heart, because there are many things that a player can do that they can only do in the main phase. This is where you normally cast artifacts, battles, creatures, enchantments, planeswalkers, sorcery spells. It's also where you can play a land.
Yes, but what about second main phase? Second main phase...
He knows about second phase, doesn't he? Untap? End step?
Yeah.
Post-combat?
The second main phase happens after combat. It is identical to the first main phase, except there are no turn-based actions after this phase, and if you played a land in your first main phase, you can't do it during your second main phase. It is possible to gain additional main phases. If you do, only the first main phase is considered pre-combat, and all other main phases are post-combat, if it matters.
So we mentioned we're going to go into the depths of combat next episode when we cover attacking and blocking and everything to do with that. In this episode, we're going to cover the steps and the turn-based actions that you'll encounter in combat. First, we have the beginning of combat step. There is one turn-based action here, but it only applies to multiplayer games that aren't free-for-all and is not on the L1 test. So not going to really dive deep into that right now. Then the active player will get priority. This is the last opportunity to do things like crew vehicles or unalive a creature before you declare them as an attacker. Because coming up next, we are in the declare attackers step. The first thing that happens is that we declare attackers. This is a turn-based action that does not use the stack. Once we start declaring attackers, there is no in response until all attackers are declared. Then, any triggers waiting to be put onto the stack go onto the stack, and there's a round of priority passes. Once no one is doing anything, we move on to the declare blocker step. The first thing that happens here is the opponent or opponents in turn order declare their blockers. This is a turn-based action that does not use the stack. There's no opportunity to stop blockers from being assigned once you start assigning blockers. Once you are in the declare blocker step, that's it. You can't stop those blockers from being assigned. They have the ability to jump in front of whatever they want to. At this point, triggered abilities go on the stack after the turn-based action, and we have a round of the priority dance. Woohoo!
Yes, you can dance if you want to. You leave your kids.
You can leave your attackers behind.
Right.
Which is similar to the appeals dance, but not quite as fancy.
Much less fancy. All right.
That's in the L2 test, kids.
So once blockers have been declared, we've had a round of the priority dance. Once all that's done, we move to the combat damage step. And guess what? We have another turn-based action. The active player, as part of all this, the active player announces how each attacking creature is going to assign its combat damage, and then the defending player does the same. This is relevant in the case of multiple blockers or creatures with trample, that kind of stuff that we'll talk about in next episode. Okay, this does not use the stack. Okay, you can't do something in response to knowing how damage will be assigned. Okay, then, after damage is assigned, there's another turn-based action of applying all that damage simultaneously. And this also doesn't use the stack. Okay, then we check state-based actions. We cart the the unalived creatures off the battlefield. Please insert your Bring Out Your Dead Monty Python reference here. We put any triggers on the stack, and then the active player gets priority. All right, now, there's an exception case. If at least one attacking or blocking creature has first strike or double strike when the combat damage step begins, there's going to be 2 combat damage steps. The first one is for first striking, and the second one is for leftover striking. All right? Then we come to the end of combat step. This one is kind of unexciting. This step has no turn-based action, but there is a rule associated with it. So be sure to check out our combat episode to hear all about that super cool rule. That's what we call a tease in the biz, right? Is that what that's called?
I think so.
Podcast
I don't know. What's the biz?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing.
So after combat, of course, we have the second main phase, but after that, we have the ending phase. And when we get there, we have an end step. The end step has no turn-based actions, so we go directly into performing state-based actions and then putting any triggers like at the beginning of the end step on the stack. There may also be a few effects that created a delayed trigger that will trigger and go on the stack as well. Each player receives priority. In a lot of ways, the end step is a mirror of the upkeep step.
And finally, we get to the cleanup step, which is sort of a mirror to the draw and untap steps. As the cleanup step begins, there is a turn-based action where the active player will discard cards from their hand if they have more than what their maximum hand size allows. This is often regarded as discarding to hand size. This cannot be responded to.
After the active player has discarded cards, if necessary, during the cleanup step, we have another turn-based action. All damage is removed from permanents and all until end of turn, and this turn affects end. These actions happen at the same time. So something like your creatures gain +3/+3 until end of turn. This is when it loses that +3/+3. Normally, no players receive priority during cleanup. However, if a state-based action needed to be performed and or a trigger is waiting to be put on the stack, you'll perform any state-based actions, you'll put the trigger on the stack, and if triggers go on the stack or state-based actions are performed, then each player will have an opportunity to receive priority. After each player passes on this priority without taking any actions, another cleanup step begins. And the game will not move forward until the next turn, until we can finish a cleanup step without any player receiving priority. And with that, turn's over. There is, however, one last turn-based action. All the other turn-based actions that we've talked about have happened at the beginning of steps and phases. This one happens at the end of each. Okay? When a step or phase ends, any unused mana in a player's mana pool is lost. Okay? So you can't take it with you.
Can't take it with you. It just goes poof. Kind of like we're about to go poof, because I think that covers everything here, other than our final thank you to Judge Foundry for this episode, for their support in sponsoring this series, for helping you earn your level 1 certification. Make sure to visit judgefoundry.org and click on the orange Become a Judge button to learn how you can join the Magic judging community in the US and Canada and earn your certification with Judge Foundry.
Join us next time as we continue our series for earning your level 1 certification, Combat. And if you want to reach out to us, we have our own Discord server for judges new and old, fans, and anyone who supports the judging community. The invite link to our Discord server is in the description below, as well as our JudgeCast and individual social media links. If you're a fan of our content, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel and ring that bell to be notified when new videos in the series are posted or when a new episode of our full podcast is released. Make sure to check out our channel's playlist for our complete L1 series, as well as a Learn to Judge playlist with episodes from JudgeCast's history focused on helping you become a better judge. And as always, you can find everything relating to JudgeCast at judgecast.com. With that, I'm Charles Feather, and I keep it fair.
I'm Marcos Sanchez, and I keep it fun.
I'm Bryan Charles, and I wanted to use Giant Oyster instead of Veldekin Shackles as an example of being able to choose something not to untap.